think you're.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, my light's not on here. Oh, it's on.
I'll check those.
We'll start over. Notice is hereby given a regular meeting of the Brookshire Economic Development Corporation to be held Thursday, October 3rd, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. in the council chambers of the Brookshire Municipal Building, 4029 5th Street, Brookshire, Texas, for the purpose of considering the following agenda items. We'll call to order. We'll have prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, we'd just like to thank you once again, Father God, for allowing us the opportunity to gather in this chamber on today, Father God. And Father, we ask that as we come together as a board on today, that the decisions that we're going to make upon today be not only be for the betterment of the city, but be pleasing upon you. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll have roll call. Present.
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 Okay, thank you. Next agenda item number 5, public comments. We have no public comments. We'll move to agenda item number 6, consent agenda. Approval of Brookshire Economic Development Corporation Board meeting minutes for September 5th, 2024, September 19th, 2024, and B, the monthly accounting financials.
I'll make a motion to approve the EDC board meeting minutes for September 5th and September 19th, 2024, and also the monthly accounting financial report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move to agenda item number 7. Discuss and possible approving receiving a copy of every invoice for Brookshire EDC packets. And board members, in the past, we have always kept record of all the invoices in the city, on the city side, and the Brookshire economic development side too. And that way, if there is anything we needed to look up really quick, we'll have access to it through Miss Vicky. This is why I wanted this on here.
Question, just a quick question for me. Moving forward, if we have any questions, would it be Vicky that's gonna kind of give us an explanation of something, or who are we looking forward to now?
It will more likely be, if Vicky can't answer that, we would direct the question to Ms. Molina or Stacy. Okay, Ms. Goatee.
Okay, so moving forward, they'll be at the meetings? I was just wondering if we had questions, who we can go to.
Yeah, I think Erica would have been here. She just wasn't feeling well today.
Okay,
So,
so normally-
typically she would be here.
Okay, okay.
That's your recommendation?
Sir?
That's your recommendation?
Yes,
All right. Make a motion that we approve the receiving a copy of every invoice for the EDC packets.
I second.
Agenda item number 8, discussion and possible act.
You have to do the
I'm
all
sorry.
in favor.
Yes, sir.
Take a look.
Oh, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it, thank you. Agenda item number 8, discuss and possible action receiving a copy of the monthly bank statements for a Brookshire Economic Development account. And this is the same.
All right. I make a motion that we receive a copy of the monthly bank statements for EDC account.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. And agenda item number 9, which was a presentation for Power Up Texas. We'll table this one up until we hear from them to come to a presentation. Agenda item number 10, discussion and possible action, possible approval to establish the application process for the membership on the EDC board.
So I know we talked about this quite some time, so I guess we definitely need to try to get this figured out. 'Cause we kind of kicked it up the road several times. If that's what the plan is for us to do. I think maybe the question was kind of what it looked like. Is that where, so we do agree that we want an application? Is that part set in stone already?
I think when we last met, the application as is written was fine. It was just discussion of background checks, but if we want to proceed without the background checks, we can do that. We can do that. Other than that, I think the application is fine as it's written.
So we're just waiting on to see how we're going to make sure the background checks are done. Or are we going to be utilizing our police department, or how are we going to do the background checks?
Well, that was a question. You know, anytime you implement background checks, you have to have a criteria for it.
Mhm.
You know, do we go 7 years back, 3 years back? What type of criminal backgrounds do we accept and not accept?
Mhm.
Or do we want background checks on it at all? I mean, most of the time, when people are recommended for EDC board,
Mhm.
it's someone that fills out an application here in the city or in the ETJ or outside the city.
True.
Pretty much everybody know everybody. It's a small town. Of course, still could be things out there. So the question is, do we, as a board, want to include background checks or not? And if we choose to do so, we can partner up with the Brookshire Police Department and get some criteria.
I agree. Or maybe we can even use the same criteria that the city uses for their employees.
Question, what does the city do?
I think we can match, if they're 3 years, 7 years, or whatever they have set in place, their policy, we can abide by that same policy for the board members as well.
Okay. So we'll check with the city and see what their criteria is.
Okay.
And then we implement that if it's feasible or whatever.
Mhm.
And we should be able to move past it next time you have comments, sir.
I have a question for the board. Would you like me to do a survey of other EDCs and come back with some examples from across, and specifically if you had others that you want to look at, or if you'd like me to take a look at similar sized cities, I could certainly get a list of criteria of how they do it, and then you could take a look and pick and choose what you like from that as well. There's nothing urgent, but I'm happy to help if that would be of
That
service to
sounds
you.
good. That sounds good.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. We postpone that one.
Yeah, I don't think we need to take any action on this one. Agenda item number 11, discussion and possible approval of Hovis Park repairs.
Okay, so I asked for this one. Hovis Park is it's a really, really nice park. It needs some repairs done there. I went to go visit the park. Me and Mr. Green and the youth director that's over there. When Hurricane Beryl came, there was some damage done at that park. The dugouts, the tops on the dugouts are not right. They're flapping in the wind when the kids are trying to play. The fencing need work. The lighting need work. The tennis nets need to be put back up. The basketball goal nets need to be put up. The soccer field needs to be taken care of. The park lawn needs to be trimmed out better. And I know the city's doing a good job at that, but the AstroTurf on that field has to have special equipment to maintain it. And if it's not done, it's going to be ripped up it's going to be damaged at a very expensive cost. So we need to get this project going since we have the new budget now to get all these repairs done. Now, in the interim, I've asked the city director, Clint Taylor, to use some city funds to get the immediate safety things done now, so we don't have any kids or anybody getting injured out there. So I would like to make a motion that we move forward with coming up with an itemized estimates on getting these types of repairs done, so we can get it posted out, do the proper procedures for getting to starting the process.
And Hopeless Park was one of our, in our budget, right?
Yes.
We did already.
Yes, it's in the
Yes,
budget.
I thought so.
It's in the budget.
All right, I second that motion.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Motion passed. Discussion and possible approval of development inquiries. Yes, sir.
Mr. President, members of the board, nothing to act on at this point. What I'm going to do is this and go through the inquiries. At the last meeting, Board Member Richards asked me about the status of bringing back a report. And so what you have here is the first draft of that report. It is by no means everything I would typically include, but it's a starting point. And I will get to the list of, it would be this document, has the yellow on it, okay? And in each month, the idea is that we would go through a report from myself and working with the team that runs off, here's what's going on in the community. Some of the information that you'll, for example, that's yellow, that's a business retention program. What that is we visit with the existing companies within your community to find out how they're doing. And that's of all sizes, to find out if they need anything, if there's things that the city can do to assist. That section is yellow because right now that's not a program that has been adopted, but what you're going to see me do is bring up a number of ideas for your consideration. You may say, we don't want to do that. You may say, why haven't you started yesterday? You may say, no, I don't like that, but I want to do it this way. I have no pride of authorship. My goal here is to help you all be successful. I'm going to tell you what I see as regular programs, what I see as effective, what I see as less effective, and then we go with whatever y'all want to do. But I'm always going to make a recommendation, not about what you want to hear, but what I think is the right thing to do. And this report is a place to start. So I start with what's going on in the population, and by the way, the 41,000 was on the population is not for here. That was I stuttered with my fingers. That would put the wrong numbers. But the population growth rate is correct. The median household income is correct. The percent of rental housing, that is information I got from GIS Services. The number of businesses I got from a number of sources in here. Sales tax I pulled from the state. This is to help. The idea with this is to give you a snapshot about what's going on in the community. From that, it goes into the operations, business recruitment. The business recruitment, that's when you talk to me about potential action on deals. So what I do there is say, here's the number of leads that we've had in this month. And when there's an average square footage, and these leads that I'm going to talk to you about, they're not all the same, and so I didn't include square footage at this time or jobs because not all of them have jobs at this point. But I wanted to get you familiar with how I'm organizing the information and answer any questions. The years-to-date lead, that's actually the additional leads that I've received while I've been working with you. So it's not calendar year-to-date, it's not fiscal year-to-date, it's just while I've been working with you at this point, and that will change. And the average acres is basically the number of acres on average that these projects are looking at. The dollar value is different because one of the projects I'm going to tell you about is a sales tax collection. So it's not a capital investment, it's about what they create in sales that the city would have a benefit from. From there, the source of the leads. Why is that important? Because there's different places we want to know as we start marketing, as we start working, where is the information? Where are these people having an interest? What's being effective, and what could we include? What could we increase? What do we need to stop? Where are the contacts coming from, and how do we change that? And then, for example, the Waller EDO, Economic Development Corporation, they brought one to us already this year. And then from that, it breaks it down to the type of projects we're looking at. So you're saying what's coming in and what are these types of projects. From there, it gets into the projects, that actually things that I'm working on. Recognizing that some of these things may not be under the purview of this board, but the board is charged with economic development. So the TERS is a city entity that we're working on to fix those issues. But yet I'm still going to report here so that you're all aware of what's going on, because it's an economic development initiative. The following page, the back of that page, then gets into unemployment rates and compares Brookshire to Waller County to Texas and the U.S. So what you can see June and July. We're tracking that. From there, I get into the business recruitment, and that's what you said, things that are being considered. So Project Gemini is an electronics manufacturer, which I've spelled incorrectly. And here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to apologize up front, because I'm dyslexic and I can barely spell my own name. So if you see problems in what I write, you can beat me with a wet noodle or a stick or whatever you want. I'm not going to spell it any better, because that's a failing of mine. I'm just going to own it right now. So I'm going to mess those things up from time to time, and that's just my goofy, okay? Yes, sir.
But make sure the numbers are right.
Oh, yes, sir. Well, and I already messed that up with a 41,000, so I might as well leave now, huh? But anyhow, yeah, we're getting. I'm not hitting, but I'm missing closer, is what my daddy would say. So Project Gemini was a project that came to us as a code word from a site selector. They were looking at roughly 25 acres, and they had about 200 jobs and estimated about $70 million. They were looking at Empire West. The problem was that they couldn't come to an agreement with the landowner. So I talked to them and I switched them to a different site, because they said we're going to go someplace else. We can't locate here. So I was talking to a landowner who wants to develop, which is the project new business park down there. They had an interest in doing a business park, and I connected them with the idea that maybe we might be able to just move it from one site to another. Don't know if that's going to happen yet. The folks at the company who's it remains nameless, it's just a code word at this point. They have another site in Waller County that's not in Brookshire that they're pursuing, because they were already pursuing it. They have an interest in talking to the folks on the 26-acre site, but I don't know that it's going to happen. The Project Liquid Stone is something that I would not bring to this board, because what it is it's a sales tax sharing agreement. And if you're not familiar with that, what that does is this company would come in, they would locate in the community, and they sell products to where the situs, the location where the sale takes place for sales tax purposes, would be in Brookshire. They would start with about $80 million of taxable sales. That means $1.6 million in annual new revenue to the city at 2%. So that's a project that I'm going to be pushing forward, because the idea is we don't have the sales tax. So if you come and locate in our community, we're going to share part of the sales tax that you're going to generate. So that 1.6, we're probably going to look at giving you a good percentage of that back, whatever we can negotiate. Oftentimes it's 40 to 50%, because that's typically it's kind of like when you sell and buy your house. You typically know what the rate of 6% is for your commission. So you're getting a part of that back for this stream of revenue that has no other infrastructure. They maybe have 15,000 square feet, may have their headquarters, but it's not a big draw in your community, but it's bringing a significant amount of revenue. They're not uncommon. I've done any number of these, from Medline and Sugarland to actually Rosenberg. 12% of their revenues in sales tax come from one of these, and it's from Builders First Choice. This is a different type of company. So that's a project where I need to get on the agenda with council to have an executive session on a Chapter 380, because if you're not familiar, Chapter 380 goes directly through the city, does not go through this board. Okay? The Starbucks, which is later on, this is a project that's off of 10th Street. The owner of the property had been in conversation with former members of this board in the city for some time. But they were saying that we'd like Starbucks to come to the community. Okay, everybody was excited. We just need to redo 10th Street. Okay, well, what's the cost of that? Well, we're not sure. We need landscaping and we need to redo 10th Street. We started looking into this. As I finally, about a month ago, get in contact with the people, what I find is a little bit different story than what we were led to believe. So the owner of the property, developer A, comes in, and he says, I want to get a contract with you as the owner of the property. So we have a contract, and I'm the developer. Now, as a developer, what I do is I'm one of Starbucks' selected developers, meaning I'm not Starbucks, but I have a relationship with them. So if I can find them sites, I present them, and I'm already approved as a developer, and they will work with me. So they go out and they get your property and your property and your property in different locations under contract. And they go to Starbucks and say, look at these sites. Are you interested in these? And Starbucks says, well, I like this one, I don't like that one. Let's start coming to terms. So they start negotiating on these deals. Well, we haven't noticed in that conversation, we haven't had a conversation with Starbucks. Starbucks hasn't committed. This is the developer trying to attract Starbucks. So the developer says, I've got this deal, and you need to go, city, you need to go put a roadway and improve the landscaping so we can get Starbucks. And my comment is, let me talk to Starbucks. I want to make sure if I recommend to you as the board and as the city that you spend money to go do this, that I have the guarantee that Starbucks is going to come. Well, I don't have that. So the developer's trying to do this on the come. And so the other thing I do is I put things in writing to make sure that there's no misunderstanding about what the issues are. And the developer confirmed that Starbucks has not committed to the deal. In fact, Starbucks is looking elsewhere. If you get the landscaping done, if you do the roadway, well, then Starbucks might look. Well, I'm not ready to spend several $100,000 of public money until I have an agreement from Starbucks that you're going to come. I'm not going to bet on the fly. So this project, and I know there has been some conversation behind the scenes that some board members may be familiar with, but as you look into the details, Starbucks had never committed to this deal yet. And please understand, I'm not saying anything bad about the developer. If they can get us to agree, good for them. They're trying to do what they do, which is to make money as a developer. They're not doing anything wrong. They're asking. If we're dumb enough to say yes, that's our fault. But what I try to do is to make sure that if you're promising me that we're going to get Starbucks, that I have assurance that if I go do what you're asking for, we get it. And right now, that's not necessarily going to happen. So we've put it back to the developer and said, listen, we would love to talk to Starbucks. We would love to find a way to make this work. We'd love to find a way to improve that roadway as a part of this transaction. But we need to know that if we spend those dollars, we have certainty that Starbucks is going to come. And that's where that sits at this moment. We had a conversation with a site selector. I call it fly by night because they just showed up and said, we need 100,000 square feet of existing building by a railroad. And, well, the only place that was going to be, well, there isn't a building. There's vacant land. So we didn't have Vicki actually took that call and forwarded it over to us. So that one's not necessarily going to go anywhere. We didn't have a site for them. The new business project, that is off of 11th. And they have 26 acres. It's a family that owns the property. They're partnering with a developer to bring that as a new business park. They're going to come back to us once they have their plans and talk about what their goals are, what they plan to bring to the city, and whether or not they have any requests for incentives. Ace Hardware, got a call from a gentleman who's a developer for Ace Hardware, and they're looking at parcels of land across from Orlando's. That's the best way for me to describe it. And they wanted to see what the way that that's set up. There's what can they build over, what can they do for the development. So I worked with LJ Engineering, get them set up with a pre-development meeting so they can go through the process, understand what the regulations are, and move that forward. The role of economic development here, what I typically do is be a supportive role to the planning folks and help translate between city speak and private sector to make sure both parties are getting what they need. Not to short shirt what the city needs, but to make sure the developer's needs and the city's needs are understood and dealt with. So that's not going to be an incentive project, but it wouldn't be a bad investment, growth to see new business, new retail in this area develop. We've had some developers inquiry. The same owner of the property that's for Starbucks has additional parcel that they want to talk about some infrastructure. Part of the issue with that is in following up on the drainage, the conveyance system is not presently in place for them to be able to drain off of the property to the other outfalls. They worked with the drainage district, and the drainage district said, we don't have the right of way for you to get a channel from your site over here at this time. So LJ Engineering, your city engineer, is looking at how they can work with TxDOT to provide them access to the drainage. It'll take a little bit longer, and so we're working through LJ to get the developer and the landowner together to make that happen. And then there's also a sublease. There's a company which you would recognize the name that has about 100,000 square feet in the business park that they're going to look to sublease. So they're changing their location. They're going to be moving their businesses out, but that's 100,000 square feet of space that can be relet and to attract someone. We're working there. The next section of the report gets into. Yes, sir.
Before you move forward.
Please, sir.
Excuse me, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
So, the Ace Hardware deal, that property is still for sale across the street from Orlando's? I think I see a for sale sign over there.
I don't believe they have it under contract. Right now, they're just doing their due diligence and interest. So I cannot tell you the status of whether or not they've solidified a contract, only that we've set this up from a development inquiry standpoint.
Okay, so you don't know if they purchased this property or not?
I don't believe well, they're not going to, no, I'm sure they haven't purchased it, because typically the process is I want to find out whether or not I can accomplish my goals before I go spend the money on the land. So you typically you do as much as you can before you put it under contract, because when you put it under contract, you typically have 90 to 120, 180-day window to do your due diligence before your earnest money is non-refundable. And so they try to make sure that before they get to that point, they do as much as their due diligence.
I understand. Concerning the Starbucks deal.
Yes, sir.
Concerning the Starbucks deal. Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. Concerning the developer inquiry, what location is that? Oh,
well, the developer, the fly-by-night, or the developer, that's Mr. That's also off 10th Street, and now I can't pronounce. It starts with an S, and I can't remember his name.
It's 10th Street or 12th Street?
Chevron.
Oh, behind Chevron. Okay. All right. And also for the board, with Starbucks, the request that this company wanted to repair the 10th Street, if this deal falls through, then we'll have an extra $400,000+ that we had kind of set aside to do 10th Street, some pavement work on 10th Street, just for your information.
And thank you for reminding me that my comment to the developer was, if the city already had the improvements to that roadway scheduled within a year or so, then the risk to the city for improving that roadway would be minimal. But if you're going out of your way to spend several $100,000, it doesn't make sense.
You're not committed.
Yeah. If you're already doing it, then there's no risk to the city because you were going to do it anyway. But if you're not going to do it, it doesn't make as much sense.
I do have a question about that. Do we know how much or how long conversation has been in with Starbucks before we finally realized this? Seems kind of.
I do not know the exact date. I know that it has been longer, depending on who you talk to. Some folks will say that they couldn't get a response from the city. That's one of the things I heard. But these are the same folks who were saying they needed to have it for Starbucks when Starbucks hadn't committed. So I don't know the veracity of I don't know how truthful some of the claims are, but I'm aware. I was aware of the project for some time and could not get a hold of anyone. So I believe it's been probably 4 to 5 months.
I'm sorry, no. So for this particular project behind Chevron, do we know what type of business that this is going to
No, sir. We don't. Not yet.
Is this the plat that was approved?
Yes.
Is it an apartment complex or is it? I remember.
I can't answer that.
So you're gonna meet with the developer,
I'm going to meet with the landowner first.
the landowner.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the landowner because that's their property.
I'm not 100% sure on that. So I don't want to.
And I tried to meet with them, and then honestly, we had a meeting set up I missed it because I had a family emergency with a pet, actually, and it had to reschedule, and we didn't get that scheduled. He was traveling. He's back in October, so I'm going to be getting back with him, but I have not met with him
If you get a chance, please, we'd like some details on this particular one. I mean, I would, yeah.
Certainly. I'm not avoiding the details
Oh, I
to
know you-
keep them from you. I
understand.
don't have them yet.
I understand.
The next section, what I start doing as we get agreements is to include the things that are existing agreements. Even if they're a tax abatement, similar to the TERS, I want to make sure that the board is aware of the economic development activities that are going on within the community. It's also, as you were talking about having a record of your expenses or expenses, it's the thing that gives us a paper trail so that we can follow month after month. And as board members, you know, it's a performance measure, if you will. You can see what things are happening. From there, there's business improvement grants. Now, that's in your packet or in the things I've handed out to you. There's a couple different things I've added. So I put together some other things that I'm going to want to talk to the board about. It's not on the agenda today to go through the details, so I'm going to give you time to review them, and then let's come back to them. So what I've done is this. I'd like to make sure that as projects come into us, initially, this is how I capture information. So if I have a conversation, I start writing some of these things down before we have an application. I don't want to make business ABC start jumping through, here's an application, go fill out 4 or 5 pages. The first contact is basically have a conversation so that I'm not being bureaucratic, I'm gathering information. And we can determine whether or not something we want to pursue. If we get to a point that we want to pursue it, we can capture all the details. Once we get all the details, I'm capturing a lot more information. That information is contained in this thing called the application for incentives. And this goes through a series of things that explains what our goals are. It starts out by telling you that all applications are taken on a case-by-case basis and considered on the specific aspects. It means that we're not going to, just because this person over here got an incentive doesn't mean you get the same incentive. We consider each project separately. Secondly, just because we have money, there's no guarantee we're going to give you a dime. Okay? It's not an entitlement program. Third, all incentives are subject to final approval, written agreements, approved in open regular session by the City Council of Brookshire. Okay? And it says City Council, and it's not meant to as a slap to this board, but the fact of the matter is the council still has to approve things anyway, so it's not done until that time. From there, it goes through a series of logical sections. What type of incentive are you asking for? What's the business that you're doing? The type of project that you're considering so that we know where it fits. The development, is it ground up? Are you renovating? Is it an existing build out of a building or a renovation? Or is this an existing business that we're trying to retain? And then is it owner occupied or are they leasing it? From there, I get into the financials of what's the land value, the existing improvements, how much is on there now? What are you adding to it? What's the personal property? It could be that you're adding for machinery and equipment, and then what's the inventory? This is important to us because it'll ultimately end up in property tax values that impact the city. From that, we also get into when are you going to start, where's it located, tell us more about the project, then project over the next 10 years. Why? Because many of these agreements last 5 or 10 years. So I want to know what your projections are so that I can incorporate that into the assessment. From the taxable values to the number of jobs, the summary goes through the company. There's a lot of information we're capturing here. But I'm not doing that until we've decided we already know some of this, so they don't have to fill as much of it in. And this piece of information, when there is actually an assessment that goes to whether this board appoints a committee or we do it with this board in executive session, there's another review sheet that's a 1-page. Let me get my sheet. Apologize. Here we go. No. First, there's an agenda format. So if we have a meeting on it, I have a standard agenda that covers the thing. So the whole idea is you don't see it new every time. We're not reinventing the wheel. You know what you're going to see. You know where you're going to go. You can quickly come up to speed. That's the whole purpose of this. Similarly, with the report format, it breaks it down into the same types of information. It's the one with the map on the back, which now I can't seem to find in my sheet. Yes, that right there. This, because what this one is I can't find mine, is it just summarizes the basic information and also gives you a map, so you're asking where's that located at? This way you can see that, and I showed that to you when we're doing the project. So you don't have to ask me that real quick, because I've already taken care of that. So it's a standard format as we're reviewing these projects to make sure that we're doing the same thing every time. The information may change, but the format is the same. It allows us to move more quickly. And then lastly, I'm getting the business improvement grant. One of the things that not for approval of the board by any means, but I'd like to talk to you about how we deal with some of the local businesses. I've heard about how you want to make sure from some of the comments of take care of local businesses. That's not uncommon. What I put together is a set of guidelines as a starting point. These guidelines are says a business improvement grant. Now, what's its purpose? Its purpose is to help smaller businesses, existing businesses within the community that may want to have an improvement that is visible from a public right-of-way. It also could include if there are code improvements. We could expand it. This one just deals with public right-of-way. So if they have a facade improvement, they're improving the face of the building. They're replacing a sign. They're doing some landscaping. They're doing other things that improve the value and the appearance of their property that helps. This is something that we would share in. All of these grants, you will never hear me say pay you up front. And the reason is I've seen too many horror stories. So all these assume that if you get approved for this, it's a dollar for dollar match up to $10,000. And the amount of that top is subject to whatever we decide to set, so we can figure that. But you can hit $10,000 in a sign real fast these days, or an improvement. So if you spend the money, you do the project, you get the permits. Once it's done, and we've met all the criteria in the checklist that you've proven that you spent it, then we reimburse you. That's important, and as I mentioned to President Green, there are many examples, and one of them is Rosenberg with the Imperial Performing Arts, where they gave him $1 million. They gave it to him up front, and that $1 million went. Project never happened. They spent another about $1 million trying to get the first $1 million back. That didn't happen. So you will never hear me tell you it's a good idea to pay somebody money up front. If it's in arrears, my goal is to make sure that this board and the city gets the benefit of the deal they signed up for, which is you're trying to make sure these things happen. These are in arrears. It's a rebate after the fact. But it goes through, the guidelines goes through, it's what the purpose is, here's the type, here's the funding cycle, here's the eligibility. Then goes through the type of grants, the guidelines for those grants, the application and approval process, and I've selected evaluation criteria. So it's not American Bandstand, for those of are old enough to remember that. It is a set of criteria that we can kind of put numbers to and how we evaluate projects. That ensures that you don't have, if there's bias, then the bias is normalized by having systems in there, and that way the different people in the committee can have some certainty of how you're bringing things forward. Gets into funding of how that works after the process. It also talks about a review committee. I put committees in place. I don't presently know if that's a preference of this board or a preference of the city, but I'm common to you. It's common for me to use them, so I put it in there for a discussion point, and then there it gets into reverse the right to amend these guidelines at any time. Termination of it, but I think it's relatively holistic in its approach, and I'd ask folks for these documents. Again, I have no pride of authorship. I'm trying to move things forward. I would welcome the board's input, and we can schedule this for a more complete discussion at the next meeting, but I'm giving you food for thought. Yes, sir.
Concerning well, first of all, thank you for providing this information. I think it's really, really good. It's going to be helpful. It provides structure for the entire process, which is what's needed. One thing that I would like to see, if possible, for your application process for new business is a follow-through after what businesses get here. And we do establish some type of agreement tax agreement with them or process with them that the proper procedures that on the city side that should be followed to make sure that all of the proper documents are submitted to the proper places and things done like that. So when this application process starts, these documents will be in the folder and for each business that comes in, and this will follow through the entire process in accordance with the audits and the state laws and everything. So if there was another document that you could prepare
Amen.
for the guidelines on the city side. So
So-
administration change.
What you're talking about is a checklist, sir, and
The
that's.
board change,
yes.
of course, the board's gonna eventually change, we know, vote time, whatever. The city secretary and the comptroller, we have a full-time comptroller that she can keep up with all of these documents and make sure things from administration to administration is intact, you know.
Thank you.
Also-
Let me agree with you first, and secondly, point out a couple things. Following up, that relationship has several different aspects. What I hear you say, to make sure we're on the same page, is, and what I've already envisioned in what I've used elsewhere, is a checklist.
Yes.
In addition to that, as part of that checklist, there are due dates of whose responsibility and what is.
Absolutely.
Okay? On top of that, there is this element here that I've highlighted that doesn't exist. That's a business retention program. Once they're here, you want to stay. It's easier to keep what you have than to go get something new.
Right.
So let's stay in touch with the businesses. That's one thing. That's a little bit goes beyond what you're talking about, because what I hear you're speaking of, sir, is to make sure that we don't drop the ball and we have what we had previously with some of the tax abatements.
Absolutely.
That's the internal processes. But I believe a well-run economic development program goes beyond that. And I believe the responsibilities of that also fit with us to make sure if you're paying me money, then what you need to do is make sure I'm setting up, so if I get hit by a submarine crossing the street, you know where the information is, and we don't lose, that's why you're seeing these things. So I agree with you 100%, and I'm going to add to that checklist. I just don't have it with me today.
I understand.
But if we're on the same page is what I'm hearing.
Same page. Also, concerning the this document for local businesses, do you attend different workshops? Like, for instance, I previously, not too long ago, attended the Texas Two-Step that was hosted by Governor Abbott's office, and there's a lot of good information that they provide in those workshops for local businesses, grants. All that, and I think I shared some with Ms. Odie, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm just asking, do you keep up with all those things and attend those workshops?
I do. In fact, I also do the required sales tax training myself every
Okay.
2 years. I do that. I stay involved with TEDC, which is the state's state association. On top of that, I meet with the governor's office, and just about a week and a half ago, I was meeting with the State Lodging Association on programs there. And I was going to mention to you in this report, in this activity report that I didn't highlight, in November, I'll be attending a site selector event promoting, getting to know what's going on in Texas, promoting Texas and sites in Texas, and understanding what the site selectors. So, short answer to your question is yes. Longer answer is I do quite a variety of ongoing education and relationship building, so up and down the chain.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And some of it goes beyond not just, some of the things that you benefit from are what I do for other clients as well. Like the site selector visit, I'm doing that for another client. But while I'm there, I'm meeting site selectors. Those are relationships that that client has specific types of projects that don't fit here, but yet the site selectors that are there cover other things that might fit here. And so those relationships go beyond just, relationships are important. That's the way the world works. And so I always leverage all the contacts and information I have to the benefit of all my clients.
All right. Thank you.
Question for me, I know this still says draft, do we need to get it approved, and will this be online?
So, short answer to your question, several questions. I do want to get them approved. I would like to have them adopted, but I'm not, there's nothing on the agenda where you could drop it this
Right,
evening.
no, I just wondering.
Nor would so let's talk about process. When we bring up new policies or aspects that I'm asking you to consider, or that you're asking me to bring to you, I believe that we should have a workshop or a discussion on that first,
Right.
before we ever have a discussion to adopt them, unless it's so minuscule that there's no need. That way, we've vetted it before we ask you to take action on it. So, yes, I do want you to take action, but I wanted this for you people to absorb it, think about it, and because it's really not on the agenda, so I'd like the next meeting, which I'm going to have, would be in November, let's come back and go through these in detail, and then we could either adopt at that time with the changes, or we could adopt it in December. This is a process where there's a lot to do, and the tendency will be to work fast. I would rather work right than fast, and I would rather take our time and go through it and have what we know that we want, what you want, and I'm not here to push you. I'm here to respond to you and help you meet your needs. So,
So the main question was, once we get, we'll be able to access this online.
yeah, so that's the other thing. So these forms, the other thing I do is I create a PDF of these applications, and I make them fillable, so they can be on the website, and people can download them, they can fill them and send them in electronically. So that's the other thing that with these, once you have these forms, then I turn them into a PDF that I put fillable lines in there, and they can just fill them out online. They don't have to.
Okay.
They don't have to just write it in. It makes it easier.
Perfect, thank you.
Does that help? That answer all
Oh,
your
no,
questions?
no, absolutely, yes, sir.
Other questions?
Sounds
So here's my question. Am I going in a direction or directions that this board is comfortable with?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Are there things that I'm doing that you want me to change? Or I'm just keep going and you'll slap a point on my head when I get out of line?
Keep going.
Yeah, keep going. We didn't have anything like this before that I'm aware of. And putting procedures in place will make things go a lot easier.
So when we talk about it, I'd like to have some, tonight is not a conversation for the strategic plan, but next board meeting, I'd also like to talk about the strategic plan. So we may have a fewer amount of agenda items, but more weighty agenda items for more lengthy discussion and walking you through a few things, if that's acceptable to the board.
Yes.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Well, folks, in about as fast as I can talk, that's a summary of the things that I've done. We're, like I said, we're not hitting, but we're missing closer. So be patient with me. If there's something that I miss, understand that it is not intentional. Like I said, but I'll get the numbers correct, but I may not spell everything correctly.
If you don't mind, can we just go to, since you're already standing, go to agenda item number 14?
We kind of talked about that, really.
Okay.
I
So
kind of hit that.
that's-
That's
Okay.
the Starbucks deal, and that's
Okay.
that. I
Okay.
kind of did them both, but I'm happy to, if we want to talk about further, whatever you
Yeah.
like. I'm here for your enjoyment
Yeah, okay.
or abuse, depending on how you want to put it.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate your work.
You guys have a good time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right, agenda item number 13, discussion possible approval nominating Nathaniel Richardson for the open EDC board position to be sent to city council for approval. Board, he was my pick a little while ago when we first started choosing people who we would recommend for the CDC board. I chose Mr. Richardson because of his prior experience and his experience with our local school district. I know some people are saying that there's people in the community who could actually serve on this board. I don't feel like Mr. Richardson isn't a part of our community. He taught hundreds of students here in this community. He's been working at Royal ISD for many years. Me personally, I feel like he's a part of our community. I don't consider him an outsider. So this is my nomination, and this is who I choose.
Second.
How many applications do we have right now? Vicky, do you know how many applications we have right now? Ms. McAnally, okay. And so she's been nominated, right? She's been nominated as applicant for for,
We did fill out the application. I don't think anyone has officially nominated her. I think she kind of volunteered herself to
so
serve.
I think the process was that the application were submitted. Did we review all of them? Did the board review? Did her application and Mr. Richardson's application? I think that's the process, right? Is that what we said?
I'm not sure. I don't think I got an application from Mr.
I
Richardson.
got his, I didn't,
I didn't get any applications.
I got a statement.
You got a statement?
No.
I got an email, you forwarded me an email from McAnally.
That's the application, the statement?
Contact information and why he would like to sit on the board.
Is this the application? How many questions on, I thought there was many other, there are several.
That's what we had at the time before we did the other application.
So, I mean, well, I'm confused now. I mean, it is,
When he originally applied, this was all that was asked before the actual application came out.
Well, we don't have I've not received the application that y'all discussed tonight.
That's what we're saying.
so this is old.
And that's, so it was asking me, that's the information to tell him that he needed as an
Correct,
application
correct.
at this time.
At that time, right, correct.
So he still needs to put in an application. Oh, you nominate him, or does he still need to put in an application? I just want to make sure that
We
everything's.
have, if we have a,
Same type of, the same questions that Ms. McNally also answered.
Okay, so they both have.
yeah, if we have a procedure in place, we need to follow the
Right.
procedure.
So the question is, Ms. McNally filled out a complete application.
No, they both did the exact same,
They
what she
did
said,
the
they
exact
answered
same-
the exact
Did the
same.
exact same thing. She gave me her name, her physical address, her mailing address, her contact information, and why she wants to be on the board.
Okay. And
My recommendation is have both applicants fill out an application. We not take motion on this tonight.
Yeah.
If we have a procedure in place, let's stick with it.
Yeah. And I know that we don't have an official finished application process, but I think the city secretary and all of them past practices that they were filling out a document, okay? So if both of them can do that to make sure the process is fair, I mean, I would appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
No action at this moment.
I do have a question. So do we need to officially nominate Ms. McAnally to get her application? I'm getting lost here. 'Cause we never did officially nominate her. I don't want to skip the
Yeah, I mean,
process.
It's just the process anyone put application. in.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not skipping that.
Yeah.
So since we just approved for the application, how are they gonna fill the application out without the background part of it?
There is a process, an application process, right, that they fill out right now that doesn't have the background
Yes.
on there. And
It's online.
so, yeah,
Is it online, Vicki?
I can get it from the city secretary, and then I can put it online, and then I'll also send it to Ms. McAnally and to Mr. Richards.
Okay, okay.
thank you.
Agenda item number 15, future agenda items. Stamps, you have any?
I don't have any at this time.
President?
I don't have anything.
I do. Audit. I went to a seminar in Fort Worth, economic development sales tax workshop, and I learned some things. And one thing that I took from that is an audit to make sure that all the right documents, procedures, and guidelines for the economic development program are done correctly. Because at some point, we will be audited, right? And so I think we need to take a look at all of our processes and make sure that everything's done right, internal and external. So that's one thing I would like to add to the agenda, audit. Also, beautification. I would like to add something on beautification on there as well for City Hall and the Dunnigan House back over there. And the welcome sign.
On 90.
Yeah, the welcome sign, possibly moving the welcome sign up by the freeway when they finish the construction work over there. And the welcome sign there and on 90. And again, Dunnigan House and also City Hall beautification.
So these are projects that we've already approved in the budget.
Yeah, this is all can be done under beautification, yeah.
I would say to the board that typically, Type B corporations like this are component units of the city, and they're typically included as a part of the city's audit overall. And so because of the control factors that are in existence for the funding, because city council is ultimate arbiter of how the funds are spent and responsible for that, typically it's a component unit of that. So the audit should be accomplished. My experience, yes, you need an audit, and typically it's included with the city's audit to make sure that, because it's a component unit of that. So it may or may not be, but that's something.
Well, I'm not speaking of an external audit. I'm speaking of an internal audit to make sure that all of the procedures, guidelines, and policies are followed by staff and the board. Because there are specific documents in this workshop that needs to be submitted monthly and quarterly and other things. So I just want to make sure that everything's being done right. Okay.
Fair enough.
So maybe if we adopt these,
No, that it's beyond that. It's some of that,
Yeah.
but there's other documents, and we can go through it.
Okay.
But once, and I think Vicky's been here a long time, so she's familiar with all of the processes and all of that. So we can start there with her and make sure that everything's being done correctly. Okay. I'm not saying anything's being done wrong. I'm saying that we need to make sure
Just
that
stay on
we
top
do-
of everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
You just need to have a process manual, policy and procedures manual.
Well, do we have one?
I don't believe you do. In
Okay.
fact, as part of that, I'd also look at, I would look as a part of that, I would create orientation manuals as board members. There's a series of things that I would put in place that are typically put in place in organizations, so that as you have a transition, as people come in, as you're appointed the board, you sit down with however the organization, whether it's an economic development director, whether it's a city administration, whoever it is. And as board members, you get an orientation that says, here's what the board's done, here's what the city does, here's what's going on, so that when you're coming up to speed, you get to up to speed quickly because they're helping you be successful in your role. That's one of the things that happens. In addition to that, there's a series of policies and procedures. In many places, what you also do, because this is a volunteer board, you have daytime jobs, all right? So you look for, you'll have what's called a support services agreement oftentimes. And the reason you do that is rather than having, it's less expensive typically for a board to work with a city when they already have auditors in place, where they already have financial services in place, where they already have legal services in place and project managers and things like that, to work with the city in support services agreements. So they provide you those services, but they're outlined in the steps that they're providing for you. And that's cheaper, less expensive, and it also has an accountability of the authorities and all the things you're talking about. We're not reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of examples of places that are doing it and have done it well for years that we can garner from. We can get that information and then modify it to the extent that it needs to be modified to meet the needs of this community. So there's a, I had a mentor one time says, steal shamelessly from others. They've done it, why do you want to relearn it? So as much as you can, find out who's doing it well and get some examples, and I'm happy to help however I can in that process. But I agree with you, sir.
Thank you.
So basically, it's like employee handbook, so to speak, almost.
Well,
I mean,
Cur-
it's outlined.
currently, we currently have a new board member handbook, right? Vicky has those, and she hands them out to all new board members, so we have that. also in this economic development tax workshop, which all board members are required to attend, and I think Eric and you are gonna go in November, right? So, and Maria and I went this last week, and I think you're gonna go in November in Houston. It gives a lot of guidelines and procedures on how an economic development process work, okay? And so, that's why I know that there's things internally that we need to look at, and Vicky may be familiar with a lot of them. And just to make sure all the documents and everything that we need is there in place. But a procedure manual, I don't know if we have one of those, or standard operating procedure manual. Okay, well, that's something that needs to also probably be developed, yeah. But thank you, sir.
For the future agenda items, if I may, I'd like to just revisit the idea of making sure that we come back to these items as a future agenda item, and also the strategic plan for our next opportunity.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, there's one more thing here, Mr. Green.
Yes, sir.
We received a request for the fall seasonal change for plants and stuff out there. So do we want to, and I know it's not on the agenda, is that something that was already scheduled, I think? And I know it's not on the agenda, but it was already scheduled, just to make note of it.
Okay.
Is that on the EDC side or the city side?
That would be EDC. That should fall up under the beautification projects. Yeah, Highway 90 projects.
Was that?
No,
That's been-
specifically Dunnigan House, but.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
But that would still fall up under
we can
beautification
add that
projects.
to, no, I mean, add that to future agendas, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Fall seasonal change out in Dunnigan House.
Do we have anything else? We'll move down to agenda item number 18.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
We have a second.
I second.
All in favor?
All right.
All right.
Adjourn.